You know, the most passive state of psychological shutdown is in fact the brain's most strategic, complex, and ancient defense protocol. It's an active choice your body makes to survive when fighting or fleeing just isn't an option. So today, we're going to show you exactly why your body chooses to freeze, and more importantly, how you can actually regain control of your nervous system.
Just let that sink in for a second. That very moment you feel the most helpless, the most passive, that's actually your brain running its most sophisticated survival software. I know, it feels like a total failure, right? But it's a feature, not a bug. A program that's been hardwired into our DNA for one simple reason: to keep us alive. And that's what we're going to unpack today. We're going to completely transform how you see this shutdown response.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with what it actually feels like to freeze. Then we'll get into the ancient biology behind it. We'll map out your nervous system's whole defense plan and pinpoint that exact moment of shutdown. Then, and this is the important part, we'll shift into some really powerful practical tools to get back in control. And finally, learn how to complete that survival cycle so you can build some lasting resilience.
Okay, so let's start with the feeling itself, because this isn't just some abstract concept, is it? It's a deeply personal and, let's be honest, often infuriating experience. This first part is all about validating that reality and just giving a name to that invisible struggle.
It's that moment, you know the one, that big job interview where your mind just goes completely white, or you're in a heated argument and you have the perfect thing to say, but your voice is just stuck. You feel like a ghost in your own body, just watching yourself fail, unable to move or think. That is action paralysis. And the feelings that come after, that wave of shame, frustration, regret, they are so incredibly powerful. You just know you could have handled it differently if only you'd had access to yourself.
And this experience creates something we can call the identity gap. It's that really painful space between the capable, smart person you are every other day and the person who shows up, or, doesn't show up, in those big moments. And here's the problem. Your brain is flagging a non-lethal event, like a presentation, as a life or death threat. It then shuts down the very parts of you that you need to solve the problem, which just creates this painful cycle of shame and avoidance.
Okay, so this is where we completely flip the script, because what feels like a personal failure is actually one of the most successful survival programs ever written into our biology. I'm telling you, it is not a bug in your system. It's the oldest, most powerful feature you have.
So here's the secret you really need to understand. When you freeze, your rational brain, your prefrontal cortex, isn't just being ignored, it's been taken completely offline. The wiring is physically bypassed. And this is why you cannot think your way out of it. You can't access logic or language or creative problem solving because the part of your brain that does all that stuff has been temporarily shut down by a much older, more powerful system.
This state actually has a scientific name. It's called tonic immobility. It's a totally involuntary reflexive paralysis. And it's amazing when you see it in the animal kingdom. You know, when a gazelle gets caught by a lion and it can't fight or run, it just goes limp. Now, this can sometimes confuse a predator, or it might just conserve energy and numb the body for whatever's coming next. Your brain is running that exact same ancient program, only it's doing it in response to a critical email or a tough conversation.
So to really get how this happens, we need a map. And honestly, the best map for our internal defense systems comes from something called Polyvagal Theory. It shows us that our responses to threat aren't random at all. They happen in a really clear, predictable order.
Think of your nervous system as a three-rung ladder that you climb down when there's a crisis. At the very top, in our most evolved state, is the ventral vagal complex, or VVC. This is our social engagement system. It's on when we feel safe, connected, and calm. But if a threat shows up, we step down one rung to the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS. This is the famous fight or flight. It floods our body with adrenaline, getting us ready for action. And if fighting or fleeing fails, if the threat feels inescapable, our body drops to the bottom rung, the dorsal vagal complex, the DVC. This is the most primitive, ancient system. It is the emergency brake, it is the shutdown.
And this really shows the huge difference in strategy. The top two systems, VVC and NSense, they're active. They burn a ton of energy to solve the problem. But the DVC, it's the total opposite. It's a passive, collapsed state. Its one and only job is to survive what feels like an inescapable threat by slamming on the brakes and saving every last drop of energy. It's not just a pause, it's a full-on energy-saving shutdown.
So how do we get there? What's the exact trigger that pushes us from that high-energy panic of fight or flight into that deep, immobilized freeze?
Well, this is the critical moment of decision, a point of no return that we call the overwhelm threshold.
I mean, really think about this question for a second. In a fraction of a moment, your brain is doing this life or death calculation. Can I fight this? Can I escape? And if the answer to both of those is a hard no, what does the system do when it decides a situation is hopeless?
This is it. The overwhelm threshold is breached. Your amygdala, which is your brain's tiny but super powerful threat detector, sends out a red alert to the whole system. All active defenses have failed. I repeat, active defenses have failed. And at that point, the entire strategy flips from active defense to passive survival.
The moment that signal is sent, the dorsal vagal complex triggers this incredibly powerful cascade of events. First, your heart rate and blood pressure just plummet. Then, your body releases its own natural painkillers, creating a state of numbness. This is why it often doesn't hurt in the moment. Then you start to disassociate, feeling disconnected from your body and your emotions. And finally, all movement just stops. Tonic immobility. A total system shutdown, all designed for one thing: survival at any cost.
Okay, so we've mapped out the problem. We get the what and the why. Now let's talk about the how. How do we consciously climb back up that ladder? This section is all about empowerment. It's about giving you real, concrete, body-based tools to re-engage your conscious brain and take back control from these ancient reflexes.
We can use a pretty clear, memorable 3-step protocol to get out of the freeze. Orient, mobilize, and complete. The whole goal here is to consciously give your primitive brain immediate signals of safety, to actively override its programming that says you're trapped and about to die.
First up, orient. When that numbness hits, your primitive brain believes you are trapped and in mortal danger. Your first job is to prove it wrong using your senses, not your thoughts. So, slowly, deliberately, just scan the room. Let your eyes wander. Now, name 3 neutral objects you can see. A lamp, a book, a window. Then, state the current date and where you are, even just in your head. It's Tuesday, I am in my office. What you're doing is sending direct, undeniable sensory data to your brainstem that says, the threat is over, you are here, you are now, you are safe. And this starts to gently re-engage that top-rung social engagement system.
Next, mobilize. The freeze creates total stillness, so the antidote has to be movement. But we're not talking about running a marathon here. We're talking about a minimal viable action, or MVA. Deliberately change your posture. If you're sitting, stand up. Even just shifting your weight helps. Firmly press both your feet into the floor. Feel that solid ground under you. Shake out your hands or your legs. This little bit of movement does 2 critical things. First, it physically breaks the spell of that immobility. And second, it starts to safely discharge all that trapped fight or flight energy that got stuck when the freeze response slammed on the brakes.
And this brings us to our final, and honestly, maybe the most crucial step. I mean, regaining control in the moment is a huge win. But to create lasting change and build real resilience, we need to deal with what happens after the event is over. We need to learn how to complete the survival cycle.
So here's the lingering problem. When you freeze, all that immense energy your body created for a powerful defensive action gets trapped. It had nowhere to go. It's like your body prepared for a huge physical sprint that never happened. And this is why you can feel so jittery or anxious or just off long after the threat is gone. The survival cycle is basically stuck on pause, incomplete.
So to fix this, later on, when you're in a safe place, you can consciously complete the cycle. Think back to that moment you felt trapped, and then physically act out the defense you wanted to do. Push your hands firmly against a wall, like you're pushing danger away. Stomp your feet on the ground like you're running to safety. What this does is it gives your brain a new corrective experience. It sends a powerful signal that says, I was not helpless, I did escape, I successfully defended myself. And over time, this literally retrains your brain to feel safer in the world.
And that really brings us to the single most important truth to take away from all of this. Your freeze response is not a character flaw. It is not a failure of will or a lack of courage. It is the absolute peak of your evolutionary programming. A successful, high-stakes decision made by the oldest part of your brain with one goal, and one goal only, to keep you alive.
So I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you feel that shutdown, that paralysis, try to see it differently. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a message. It is the physical language your body is using to tell you about a threat you never fully escaped. A survival cycle that's just patiently waiting to be completed. And now you have the map and the tools to help it do just that.